The next important character that we will find in this chapter is Reverend Stuart McLary, the invigilator. Now, meanwhile, at 8:45 a.m. on 8 June, that is the day of the examination, Reverend Stuart McLary, who is later revealed to be his accomplice, a friend, impersonating the real McLary. But what happened to the real McLary? We'll get to know at the end. Now, this McLary, who was a friend of Evans, impersonating the real McLary who had been chosen as an invigilator, left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and made his way quickly towards the Carfax. Carfax is where principal roads intersect. As per weather forecast, temperature in early June was to be much below normal. McLary was wearing a long black coat and a shallow crown clerical hat to protect himself from the drizzle. Drizzle is the light rain falling in very fine drops. Okay? And that drops of rain were falling on his spectacles that had thick lenses. Now he was carrying a small brown suitcase, and in that small brown suitcase, he was carrying a sealed question paper, envelope, yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examination board, which is a permission card that verified him as a supervisor, a paper knife to cut the seal of the paper, a Bible, as he was to speak to the Women's Guild that afternoon on the Book of Ruth, and a current copy of the Church Time. Now, Church Time is an independent Anglican weekly newspaper based in London and published in the United Kingdom on Fridays. The authentication card is deeply ironical because he who reached the Oxford prison as an invigilator is not the authentic invigilator from the examination board, means not the genuine invigilator that has been chosen from the examination board. Thus, the fake McLary had brought everything for the satisfactory fulfillment of his duty as an invigilator. That is why nobody could figure it out anything. Evans' exam was to begin at 9:15 and Evans hurriedly cleaned himself up while Officer Stephens brought in his sitting arrangement for the examination inside the prison cell. Now, what is the exam room setting? Evans' cell was bugged. Bugged means when you conceal a miniature microphone in a room or device in order to listen to or record someone's conversation secretly. So, a small microphone had been planted in the plain sight above the door of Ivan's cell to enable the governor to hear the entire processing, the communication between the invigilator and Evans, and enabled him to keep a strict watch on the activities of the cell during the examination by listening to each and every conversation in the cell. That was that is the part of the precautionary measure that the governor had taken for the smooth conduct of the examination. Now the governor himself supervised all the precautions. Stephen brought in two square tables which were set opposite each other in the narrow space between the bed and the stone wall. Next, Stephen brought in two hard chairs without cushions. The less damaged chair was put near the table that was closer to the door. Next, Officer Jackson visited Evans briefly and warned him to behave himself. What did he say? Behave yourself, lady. Because of his long wavy hair that Jackson hated, he sarcastically called him a lady. Now Evans turned and nodded. When Jackson told him to behave himself, Evans turned and nodded. Jackson ordered Evans to take down all the pin-ups, means the posters that there was there on the stone wall of the prison. He ordered Evans to take down all the pin-ups. Evans told him that he was about to remove all these posters as he knew that the person who was coming for invigilator was from the church. Now, when Evans told that he knew that the invigilator that was coming at that day to observe the examination was the person, now Jackson was surprised. He said, "How did you know that?" Ivan said that he had noticed it when he had signed the examination form, means he get to know about the invigilator when he signed the examination form, and he knew that the invigilator who was coming was a person. Now see, everything Evans was observing. Evans continued with his shaving and sought Jackson's permission to ask him something. Now, what is that question? Evans asked why the authorities had to put a microphone in his cell, and he turned his head towards the space above the door. He asked Jackson whether the prison authorities actually thought that he would try to escape. Not a very neat job, conceded Jackson, means admitted something. Jackson admitted that the microphone was not put perfectly, as Evans could easily spot it. Another mistake was that the microphone was not hidden properly. Officer Jackson replied that they were not taking any chances with his security. That is why the microphone had been put in the cell so that he could be on so he could be under complete observation. Now Evans asked Jackson again who was going to listen to the conversation in the cell. Now please note the questions. He was asking question to know what was happening in the prison cell. Jackson informed Evans that the governor himself would be listening to the entire proceeding in the cell during the examination because no one trusts Evans. Even Jackson did not trust Evans. Jackson told Evans that he would watch him like a hawk, a bird that keeps its eye on its prey. He was trying to tell that he would watch his action very strictly and hence told Evans, keep your nose clean. Now, it is a warning to Evans to behave well and not to make any trouble. Jackson walked towards the door. There was tight security in the jail and everything was put on high alert. Now, what is the fault that Jackson made? Jackson came first time, and the mistake he had done was that he did not force Evans to remove the head. But when he came for the second time, we find that two questions were put by Evans. And what are those two questions? He asked, why did the prison authorities have to bug him? And the second thing, or the bug the prison, and the second thing, the person who was coming in, was he a person or not? And Jackson from his side answered. Evans also asked who was listening or who was on the other side of the microphone who was listening to the entire conversation. And Jackson had answered everything that Evans asked. Now, Evan asked this question to keep a track of his escape plan or to plot his escape plan successfully. Evans nodded. He is already thought of that. And number two handkerchief was lying ready on the bunk, that means on the bed, a neatly folded square of white linen. Now, here the author also has left a suspense for the reader, and he mentioned number two handkerchief. But where is the number one? That number one handkerchief was in his pocket because that he was going to utilize later on, which we will come to know at the end of the chapter. Jackson sarcastically called Evans Einstein. Just one more thing, Einstein. Yeah, what is that? Good luck, old son. Now, this shows the sympathetic approach of the prison authorities towards the criminal. Now, the arrival of the major character, that is Reverend Stuart McClary, the invigilator in the Oxford prison. McClary plays the most significant role in Evans' escape plan. In the small room at the main entrance of the prison, just inside the prison main gate, the Reverend Stuart McClary wrote his name and signed in the visitor's book. He walked inside the prison premises and was escorted by a prison officer without speaking anything across the exercise yard to D Wing, where he was greeted by Jackson, the senior prison officer. The heavy outdoor of the wing was unlocked and was locked again after they passed. Now, what is that wing? The prisons are split in various wings, which can be separate buildings connected by secure walkways, and each wing may be further split into separate spars and landings. Now, Evans was kept at the wing, and the same happened when they entered through the heavy inner door, and McClary was handed over to Stephen, the junior prison officer. Now, Evans' prison, where he was kept, was secured by two doors, that is, one heavy outer door and the inner door. Now, get the razor, murmured Jackson, because remember he was shaving. So Jackson told Stephen, get the razor, and Stephen nodded. Now, well, keep your eyes skinned, clear? That is the warning to Stephens by Jackson to watch carefully or vigilantly, means strictly, on every move of Evans. That means Stephen was also supposed to sit inside, but what happened? Let us see. Stephen was ordered to sit inside the prison cell and observe everything. But what happened after that? Now, what happened and how Stephen was tricked to stay outside by Evans? Let us see. Now, after this, Stephens nodded again, and then the Reverend McWord, Reverend Stewart McClary entered the prison cell. McClary and Stephen walked up the iron staircase, and finally they stood before the cell door of Evans. Stephen opened the peephole and looked through and told McClary that Evans was there. Inside the cell, Evans' face was towards the door. He was sitting quietly, facing the door, slightly away from the two tables. His whole attention was riveted, means fixed to a textbook of elementary German grammar. Stephens took one of the keys from the ring and unlocked the door. The lock of the cell made a metallic sound after it sprung up. McClary entered the prison cell of Evans. Now the exam is going to begin. Invigilator had come, and we notice how the heavy guard, the security is there. Now, sharp at 9:10 a.m., 5 minutes before the exam was to be started, the receiver of the microphone was switched on by the governor, which was placed above the door of Ivan's prison cell so that the governor could listen to all the conversation going on in the cell during the examination. The governor had ordered Jackson to tell Evans about the temporary little precaution. He is referring to the sound recording equipment. The governor thought that Evans could not notice the microphone, but Evans was alert and observant about every major and minor steps taken by the prison authorities. Now, a thought came to the governor's mind, and he wondered if all the extra safety precautions seemed like a theatrical drama and almost like a school level drama. The governor was sure that Evans could not break out the prison this time. The governor thought that if Evans wanted to escape so desperately, he should have tried to escape from the recreational block where he was taking the German tuition, which could have been so easier, but he did not try to escape from the prison. He thought that how could Evans think of escaping that day? He was sitting in a locked room, all the prison officers were alert, there was a tight security all around. There were two more locked doors between his cell, and the yard had a high wall as high as piles of dry grass haystack. So Evans was as safe as one could be in the house, and the governor was sure that there was no opportunity for Evans to escape that day. The governor here giving himself a consolation that on that day Evans could not escape. He cannot escape under such a strict security. Now we see how the governor is extremely nervous and does all his power to prevent Evans' fourth escape attempt. He was torn between putting up all kinds of extreme security measure and not looking too worried. The governor thought that there would not be any problem if he kept the receivers switched on. although he knew there was nothing to listen because it is the duty of the invigilator to maintain silence during the exam. But he was still in doubt and was worried constantly. Because, as we know, when an exam goes on, everybody remains silent except the instruction given by the invigilator. So the governor thought that there was nothing to be listened, but he did not know the reality and how he was already been fooled by Evans. Now, how he has already been fooled by Evans, let us know that. The governor wondered that there was possibility that Evans might try to take help from McClary. Evans might have asked McClary to smuggle means to bring secretly a sizzle or two or a rope or a ladder, so he did not want to take any chance. So the governor at once got alert again. He realized that it was not enough to remove potential weapons that Evans could have as a precautionary measures. But what about McClary? McClary could also bring something that Evans could use as a medium of escape. So, so he got alert. McClary could have unknowingly brought something that Evans could use against as weapon to harm himself, such as such as a jackknife, which is a large knife with a folding blade. The governor immediately reached for the phone. It was 9:12, 3 minutes before the exam could start. Remember, the exam was scheduled to be start at 9:15, so sharp at 9:12, the governor was in the governor was in constant touch with Jackson and Stephens during the whole process. The examinee and the invigilator had been already introduced by Stephens without knowing that the invigilator was actually Evans' accomplice and not the real McClary. Now, sharp it was at 9:12 a.m. Jackson reached the prison cell and shouted McClary through the prison cell door. Can you come outside, sir, for a minute? You too, Stephens. Jackson explained to McClary about the worries of the governor, and McClary cooperated him in the checking process by holding out his arm so that he could be checked. So without any protest, McClary agreed when Jackson told that the governor wanted McClary to be checked. Now Jackson lightly frisked his clothes. Frisk means pass the handover. If you see in the films, when the security check was done, they passed the handover in search for hidden weapons, drugs, or any other items. So McClary was searched in that way. Something hard here, sir. Ma reading glasses, replied McClary, looking down at his spectacle case. Now, if you notice, this McClary had a Scottish accent, where they don't say my, but ma. Ma reading glasses. But Evans talked in a different accent. And in his escape plan, when Evans will be impersonating, yes, he will be impersonating McClary, he had to talk with this accent. He had to copy down this accent. Now, Jackson quickly reassured him. Jackson even checked his suitcase and used his thumbs to open locks of McClary's suitcase. He checked each envelope and carefully searched every document and seemed satisfied. Jackson quickly turned over a few pages of Bible he was carrying to see if something was hidden there and vaguely shook the search time. So, all right so far. So there was nothing in McClary's suitcase that Jackson should be afraid of. Even though Jackson found everything satisfactory in his suitcase, in McClary's suitcase, but one of the objects in McClary's suitcase which puzzled Jackson sorely, means severely. Jackson found a smallish, semi inflated, half filled with air rubber ring. Jackson asked why McClary had brought that ring. A rubber ring which was not even fit for a small child with 12-inch waist. He asked him jokingly whether McClary was going for a swim. McClary irritably explained that it is a special cushion for him to sit on because of his hemorrhoids. Now, what is hemorrhoids? Some people have problems of piles. and they cannot sit on hard surfaces like chair, so they sit on a rubber ring to feel comfort. So McClary suffers from hemorrhoid, and that is why when he has to sit for a long time he suffer from hemorrhoids. That is why he bought that rubber ring to sit on it. Now McClary's Hitartho amiable demeanor was slightly ruffled by his tasteless little pleasantry, and he answered Jackson somewhat sorely, means unfriendly way. This is a very important line. Please underline this. McClary's hitherto means till now friendly manner was slightly ruffled by when Jackson made this joke that McClary was going to use this rubber ring for swimming. Now, very sorry, sir, Jackson apologized. The embarrassment was still reddening Jackson's cheeks when he found the paper knife which McClary brought at the bottom of the case. I think I would better keep this though, if you don't mind, that is, sir. Jackson took the paper knife away. The examination had been scheduled to start at 9:15. Now, the question arises, will the exam now go as scheduled? No, the exam will be delayed. It did not go on as per schedule, as Jackson took time to frisk to inspect McClary, who had come to invigilate, and it was already 9:18. The governor again heard their voices on his receiver, and he understood that the exam would start a little late. Now, before the exam commenced, the invigilator McClary asked, "You have got a watch?" Evans replied, "Yes, sir." McClary told Evans that he will tell Evans when to start writing the exam, and he will again tell him when only 5 minutes will be remaining to end time of exam. Evans said nothing. McClary instructed Evans to write his paper number 0211 in the top left hand corner and write his index number 313 in the top right hand corner and his center number 271 on his answer sheet. Now, these numbers were actually the address of the hotel so that Evans could know, but nobody noted it down. But the governor was very clever. He was listening and he remembered those numbers. At 9:20 a.m., when McClary was about to say start, Evans interrupted and looked at Stephens and asked whether Stephens was going to be present in the prison cell or would be standing out. Stephens answered that he had been ordered strictly by Jackson to stay there inside the prison cell for the exam. Evans complained and objected that he would not be able to concentrate on his exam if Evans would be constantly watching him like this, sitting inside the cell. And that is why Stephen should be called outside the prison cell. Now, this was the another trick by Evans to get Stephen out of the prison cell so that he could carry on with his escape plan. Now, when he listened to this conversation, the governor reached for the phone and called Jackson and ordered him to get Stephens out of the cell, as he thought that they were doing it a bit too much, and thus Stephen was posted just outside the cell. Now, this was the biggest mistake governor had done. If Stephens had remained inside, Evans could not have got the chance of exchanging clothes and getting everything from his friends. That is, the fake McClary that was inside the cell who had come as an invigilator. The governor heard the exchanges in the cell, heard the door clanged once more, and heard McClary announce that the examination had begun at last. The examination started at 9:25 a.m., 10 minutes behind the schedule. Earlier it was scheduled at 9:15. Now it has been started at 9:25 and there was total silence. Now, what do you think? Do you think that Evans actually wrote the exam like a good student, or was the governor right that he was actually cooking up a big escape plan?